Hey, how's it going, guys? Domino Paris 21 here, and back to bring you guys another updated deck profile of mine. Well, as you guys can see here, what I have to bring you guys is my updated Soulless OTT deck for the Stride Generation format. And definitely for all my long time subscribers out there, you guys should definitely know that Scarlet Witch Coco is obviously, one of my favorite cards in the game. Soulless OTT was actually my first competitive deck I actually put together for Vanguard. So you could definitely tell I was pretty excited to, get my hands on this new support for OTT. And while me personally, I still kind of have my somewhat mixed feelings about Stride, at least for my initial impressions playing with Stride. One major pro I can really take away from Strides is the fact is, it can bring back some older cards that I guess a lot of us would presume dead, but just really excited that Coco is definitely back to being a more ideal competitive deck. And while I still feel that, this deck in general still can definitely fall to its bad matchups that it always was previously, like very highly aggressive decks, particularly like Novas and such. This deck is a lot more consistent in fulfilling its main strategy, and you have a lot easier time getting a win condition together too. So I definitely found myself at a much higher success, playing against those bad matchups with this particular deck as opposed to before. So definitely the deck has taken a nice step up in improvement. So yeah, without further ado, let's actually get started. So first off, for the starter, this is Soulless OTT, so you got to be playing your Little Witch Lulu. Really like one of the best starters, I'd say, in the game, just because being able to get that extra draw is so huge for this deck, as always, and obviously you combo with Coco to get that +3. You guys should already know how this works, so I don't really have to explain too much, so definitely got to run the Lulu. As far as grade 3s are concerned, we have, of course, your 4, Scarlet Witch Coco, and 3, Susanoo. So I only run 7 grade 3s, which I know a lot of people like to run the run like 4/4 typically, which is still fine. I actually just somehow didn't get my hands on a 4 Susanoo, and when I was testing with 7, I really liked 7. I felt like it was a great number, just because that one extra slot that would of course be for an 8th grade 3, it allows me to get to play an extra grade 2, which I feel that having a little bit more extra grade 2s is really beneficial for this deck, because your grade 3s aren't going to really be used for beaters, but just mainly for riding and striding. So that's the main reason why I don't really feel the need for 8 grade 3s for me. And plus, for how fast this deck really speeds through the deck with the immense amount of draw power this deck has inherently, I'm always able to draw into my pieces, on a consistent basis. It's very rare that I don't have a way to stride, and even if I didn't, I wasn't even in a bad position anyway. So really like the number here. So Coco, Scarlet Witch Coco, obviously you guys know when you ride her, if you have 1 or less cards in soul, draw 2, count +2, draw 2. Now her role has changed a little bit in this deck. Now she is still going to be your ideal first ride to get that +3 and start getting everything going for you, but the old strategy, of course, is to go like Coco over Coco, and you continue to draw power. But with the amount of counterblast that does cost, which is 4 in total, there's a lot more uses for your counterblast in this deck, particularly mainly for your Stride units in combination of Susanoo. So, you have a much better way to utilize counterblast, but nonetheless, you just run like Coco once, and what's nice with Stride, of course, any spare grade 3s you have, like, I remember, before Stride, Cocos, a lot of times they can be dead in your hand. You mainly use it for perfect guard fodder. But now, you have more versatile ways to use any grade 3. So, every grade 3 is usually never dead for you. So, that's kind of like the role that Coco has taken now in this particular deck. Now, Susanoo. Really like Susanoo a lot. Really good card. So, what he does is, he has the Generation Break 2 ability of when he attacks, and you have 2 face-up cards in your G-Zone, he gains +5,000 in a crit. Now, you don't really play this card for that main ability. It's kind of like an added bonus, and there's situations where he was helpful for me, maybe if I was behind in damage and such, but you mainly play him for his secondary ability. So while he's in Vanguard Circle, when you perform Stride over him, counterblast 1, and you check top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to hand, put the other in the bottom, so scurry for 2 for any Magic players out there. So yeah, it's a really good card and great combination with Stride, and does use a counterblast. So like I said, it's just there's more ways to utilize your counterblast that can potentially lead to a much more valuable like plus or draw. I guess you can say it in Coco, like being Coco like draws random cards. A big downside, of course, being the fact is you are stacking the bottom of your deck, that you could risk putting triggers in the bottom, which it does happen, but honestly it's not too bad, and as long as you're running your Lozenj Magus heal, you know, I always try to hoard these as much as I can just so I can shuffle in my deck and shuffle the deck of triggers, so my late game can be pretty powerful depending on what I stack. But yeah, that's my grade 3s. And then grade 2s, of course you got to run the Silent Tom, another one of my favorite cards in the game, and he is going to be your win condition. He's definitely going to be relied upon a lot for really closing out your games. So obviously Silent Tom does have the original classic ability of when he attacks, your opponent cannot call grade 0s to your Guardian Circle. So what makes Tom a lot better, and why I definitely say he's a must as a 4 of, is the fact is now there's an extra set of grade 1 8Ks that you can actually play in the deck. So you can create that magical 16K column a lot more consistently, and for how fast you can really speed through your deck, you can definitely get into it a lot quicker than before. So definitely guys say you gotta run the 4. I can run less than that. And then I run new Generation Break card, Diviner Shinasasuhiko. Bad with names, guys. But yeah, he's just your 12k attacker. Generation Break 1, when he attacks Vanguard, gains plus 3,000. So it's really good just to essentially make a Little Witch Lulu column to make 17. Because a lot of times I still put the Little Witch Lulu in my rearguard corners rather than behind my Vanguard. Although sometimes I will put it behind my Vanguard, but this just allows you to continue to hit some decent numbers, and you know, just a good standalone beater as well. So pretty much replaces your Mocha, being that it's a 12k attacker as opposed to 11. Not as conditional, and it's a 9k body mainly. So definitely like the 4 for that. And then I run 2 Asuha. These could be like anything of whatever name you want. It could be a singleton of 10k vanillas, but yeah, they're 10k vanillas. I like it just because, you know, it's a good solid body to ride turn 2, so you don't get abused too hard. Especially, you know, riding a 9k is not bad, but I just like the idea of being able to ride a good defensive body, because it just takes away your opponent's options for trying to rush you with any spare beaters they may have turn 2. So I definitely like that. And it's just, you know, something that your opponent can't really pick off too easily, but it's really for that defensive body that you played for. And last but not least for my grade 2s, I do have my techie card of the deck, Promise Daughter. So Promise Daughter is like actually an older classic card for OTT. But what Promise Daughter does is when she attacks, you can discard 1 card from your hand, she gets plus 5. So obviously, of course, you know, when paired up with the 7k, 8k, you can create like a 21k plus column. Now, the discarding 1 card, of course, is a minus for yourself. So you kind of want to, you don't want to like just abuse her ability freely. But she's in there just because she gives me another way to make that push for game and kind of give me that reach to help me get there late game if I really need to make that push for game. So I don't have to heavily rely on Toms alone. Gives me something else for my opponent to worry about. Plus, one thing I kind of like too, you know, sometimes I'll call these early. If I really don't feel like I plan on using her skill, like I could just like call her early and she becomes a damage sponge, so she can help me out defensively. Or sometimes my opponent will waste resources just to maybe get rid of her, and then it gives me more room for Tom. So it makes Tom a little safer to play. But I just like the Promise Daughter because she gives you that extra reach to make that push for game. Then you have your 4 Perfect Guards in the form of Sagari. I'm really bad, guys, so I'm sure some of you guys will hate me for butchering some of these names. But yeah, it's just your Persona Unflipper Perfect Guard of the deck. Now, again, as I say, with like, I'm going to say with like every Stride deck, yes, I know there's some matchups where you want to use a regular Perfect Guard, but the counterblasting is so huge in this deck is that it's just worth it to play these. Because like I said, like this deck really heavily relies on their counterblast a lot, and just getting extra free counterblast for yourself only benefits you. So these cards are just too amazing not to run, and surprisingly cheap too. I kind of anticipate these to be a little bit more upon its release, but hey, I'm not complaining. Then next you have your 4 Ame no Murakumo. This is your Stride enabler. So essentially how it works is, while this is in your hand, if you're paying the cost for Stride, which is grade 3 or higher, this actually counts as a grade 3 in your hand, so obviously it's a free enabler for Stride, and when it's placed on Rearguard Circle, you can essentially reveal 1 grade 3 in your hand, search your deck for a Susanoo, discard 1 card when you add it. So that's another reason why I don't mind playing the 3 Susanoo, because, you know, yeah, because if I, like, go Coco first, and then I have another spare Coco but no Susanoo, I could just drop this and then just search for a Susanoo. So it does give you that ability to do so, but mainly you use this for striding, so definitely got to run the 4 for that, because you really rely on your strides. Then you have your 6 8K vanillas. The 6 I think is the perfect number, just because, you know, with toms, you really don't want to call toms too early. You kind of wait till later in the game to do so. So you're not really, you know, as desperate to create that 16K column right away. You kind of want to prolong the game a little bit longer before you start doing that. So I found the 6 to be perfectly fine. I think that's the perfect number because, you know, the grade 1 space is pretty tight, you know, and I don't want to cut anything from my 3s and 2s, and I definitely want to run the 4 of these. So 2 is honestly the perfect number. If you do face those bad matchups of anything like Kagero that can retire your rear guards, just simply don't call these. You know, you don't have to have a full field at all times. Sometimes you can hold off on these, and like I said, with the amount of draw power this deck has, you usually always have spares anyway. So 1 or 2 can be expendable through the course of the game, depending on your matchups. Then next for triggers, I'm just going to get these out of the way. Of course, you're just sticking to 12 crit and 4 heal. You definitely want to play Lozenge Magus. Like I said earlier, you want to have access to her so that you can shuffle her back in the deck to maybe shuffle the deck of any triggers you potentially stack. But, you know, I actually try to hold these as much as I can because I had some games where I literally used every single card in my G zone. And like I literally used all 8 of my stride units, and you know I recycled 4 of these in my deck, so I actually ended the game with 7 cards in my deck where I could have potentially decked out. So she can come in clutch for you for that reason, but honestly it's really rare that you do that, and I was kind of doing it as a joke because it was like a fun tournament game anyway. But yeah, you definitely got to run her for that main reason, so definitely try to conserve these as much as you can. Then last but not least, we have my stride units. Thought to go ahead and save those for last. Sorry guys, I thought it was a little more organized, but let's see. Alright, so I actually have like a little deck box where I keep all my strides in. So yeah, it's actually pretty cool to get a stride deck box and all triple C with Karumi sleeves. So I think that's a good idea. Anyways, so moving on to stride. So first off, we're gonna start off with just the generic on hit stride. So is this your 4 Keating, Beast Keating, or I don't know, I'm not gonna read all that. So yeah, basically all it is just when he hits your opponent's Vanguard, scurry for 2 essentially. So check top 2 cards of your deck, add 1 to hand, put the rest in the bottom. So you know, this with Susanoo, it just leads to just more added pluses. I did find myself, you know, I did find my opponents guarding him a lot because they don't want to see me get the plus. So you know, it can bait out maybe some early shields as well. Maybe, you know, perfect guard that can leave themselves a lot more exposed for Silent Tom later. So, you know, this is a good generic card. Then you have like the main like key card of the deck. You have Sword Deity of the Thunderbreak, Takemiza Kasuchi. Or if I say it really fast, I say like Tame Kazuchi or Kazuchi, I don't know. I'm really bad at this, guys. So yeah, anyways, it's essentially double of what he does, except it's actually a different condition, being that when you stride, you take 1 copy of himself and you put it face up in your G zone, and if the number of cards in your G zone face up is 2 or more, counterblast 2, look at the top 4 cards of your deck, add 2 cards to your hand, and put the rest in the bottom. So you essentially, you know, it's double Susanoo. So this with Susanoo, you're adding like 3 cards to your hand, which is nice and amazing. And it's counterblast too, like I said, so the counterblast is pretty heavy. So obviously, of course, you stride into this first to set this up for him, because you have to have something already in your G zone already to make this work. So yeah, that's pretty much really good skill. Now this course really can make Tsukiyomi amazing. Because, you know, getting the stack is good, but I don't like Tsukiyomi. I think Coco is a lot more straightforward, easier, not as conditional, and you don't like auto lose if you don't get like the 1 card you need in the deck. So this card is just really amazing for the deck. So it's another reason why this deck is so consistent with this draw power. And then last but not least, I just have the one Atmos in the deck. It's just a good generic in here. Because maybe if you already expended all your uses or need for your Stride units, you know, late game, maybe if you already baited out so many Perfect Guards from your Silent Tom, you can just go with this, hit for like 36 for free. Because, especially late game, he could be very powerful because if you go just go with him and create 2 Silent Tom columns of 16k, or even 2, it can be really weird for your opponent because, you know, most likely you may have baited out a Perfect Guard or 2 from your opponent. So, you know, if your opponent is stuck with only 1 Perfect Guard and they're dealing with a Silent Tom and they're going to be dealing with this big column, your opponent it kind of puts your opponent in a really tough spot to kind of prioritize where he wants to put his Perfect Guard. And it really, you know, come around and bite him if he makes the wrong decision. But it just forces extra pressure in those situations. So I think, like, for the most part, if you're not heavy reliant on every like G-Stride in your deck, then definitely an Atmos is a very good splashable card, especially in this particular deck. So yeah, so there you have it, guys. That is my OTT deck, and yes, I'm in love with the Coco or whatever. People like to say that joke a lot, but yeah. As always, guys, don't forget to leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear your feedback, what you guys think, or any questions you have, and definitely don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you haven't.